We have a new young comedian with us tonight, and as you know, this is a hard commodity to find in this business.
For 3 decades, The Tonight Show wasn't just a talk show. It was judgment day for comedians. Under the bright lights and Johnny Carson's cool, measured gaze, 5 minutes could make or break a career. Some comics walked out there with momentum, already climbing the ladder, just needing that final push. Others were down to their last shot, one set away from quitting or becoming a household name. Because when Johnny laughed, America listened. And when he waved you over to the couch, it was over. You'd made it. Today, we're revisiting the Tonight Show moments that transformed comedians from relative obscurity to the megastars we know today. But first, don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from late-night history, and drop a comment if you remember any of these legendary Carson moments. Freddie Prinze. In December 1973, Freddie Prinze was a 19-year-old kid from Washington Heights chasing laughs and living on hope. Half Hungarian, half Puerto Rican, he was lighting up New York's comedy clubs, but invisible to the rest of America. Then The Tonight Show called. Carson's bookers took a gamble on the charismatic teenager, slotting him for his first national TV appearance on December 6th. When Freddie walked out under those lights, the ink on his 19th birthday was barely dry, and everything was on the line. What happened next was electric. In 5 minutes, Freddie Prinze went from nobody to phenomenon. His jokes about his mixed heritage and streetwise upbringing landed with flawless timing and confidence well beyond his years. Carson, notoriously hard to impress, was laughing out loud. And then, the unthinkable. Johnny waved him over to the couch. It was a rare gesture for a first-time comic. That single moment on live television was a coronation. The audience erupted, Carson grinned, and America instantly knew a star had just been born. By the next morning, Hollywood was calling. Agents, producers, everyone wanted Freddie. One of them was James Comack, who cast him as the lead in Chico and the Man after seeing his Tonight Show performance. Within a year, Prinze was headlining a hit NBC sitcom and one of the most sought-after performers of his time. Unfortunately, the demands of Hollywood and breakup with his wife contributed to his tragic end just a few years later. But that one night remains legend. A 19-year-old comic walked onto Carson's stage a nobody and walked off immortal. David Letterman. By the late 1970s, David Letterman was a sharp-tongued ex-weatherman from Indiana chasing a dream in Los Angeles. He'd written jokes for sitcoms, done sets at the Comedy Store, and waited for his shot. As he later put it, you move to LA, you go to the Comedy Store, you get on The Tonight Show. That's the path. He was 31, funny but unknown, a smart alecky Midwestern kid trying to get noticed. Then in 1978, the call came. Letterman had finally landed a spot on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. On November 24th, 1978, Letterman walked onto Carson's stage for the first time and delivered a perfectly offbeat set, dry, self-deprecating, and unmistakably his own. Carson loved it. Within a year, by late 1979, Letterman was guest hosting The Tonight Show. NBC gave him his own show in 1980, and even when that flopped, Johnny stayed in his corner. In 1982, backed by Carson's support, Dave launched Late Night with David Letterman, the show that would redefine late-night TV for a generation. Jay Leno. In the mid-1970s, Jay Leno was a road warrior, a comedian's comedian, known for relentless touring and razor-sharp observational humor. He'd written for TV and even collaborated with David Letterman on a sitcom script. But as a performer, he was still a nobody outside of comedy clubs. That changed on March 2nd, 1977, when 26-year-old Leno finally landed the ultimate showcase.
I'm originally from the United States. Any United States people here tonight? Oh, what a small world. Isn't that funny, no matter where you're from?
Leno walked on stage that night and delivered 5 minutes of pure, bulletproof stand-up. The crowd erupted, and even Carson, famously sparing with visible praise, was grinning. Jay didn't get invited to sit on the couch, but perhaps even better, he was asked to come back out for another bow to thunderous applause. The coolest part was when Johnny told the audience,
We're gonna have him back.
which is the understatement of the century. Jay kept returning to The Tonight Show, each time sharper, steadier, more precise. By 1986, Carson's team made it official. Leno was now the program's permanent guest host, the man trusted to sit in Johnny's chair whenever he was away. That trust would soon change Leno's life. In 1992, when Johnny retired, NBC handed Jay the keys to The Tonight Show, the same stage where he'd once earned his big break. He went on to host for 22 years, dominating late-night television. Leno often credits Carson for showing him what mattered: strong writing, humility, and work ethic. "Johnny taught me how to craft a joke for everybody," he said. Jay Leno didn't just perform for Johnny Carson, he became one of his most successful protégés. Garry Shandling. In the late 1970s, Garry Shandling didn't look like the next big thing in comedy. He was a shy, neurotic writer from Tucson, Arizona, quietly turning out scripts for sitcoms like Sanford & Son. Performing stand-up was his secret ambition, but he wasn't a swaggering club comic. His humor was subtle, self-aware, and a little strange. Still, by 1981, after years of refining his act around Los Angeles, the 31-year-old Shandling got the call every comedian dreamed of. It would be his first television appearance, a leap from the writer's room to the most intimidating stage in comedy. What followed was a revelation. Shandling's set, gentle, offbeat, and laced with self-deprecation, had Carson and the audience laughing with genuine surprise. His bit about yellow traffic lights being God's way of saying, "Go ahead, you're gonna make it," perfectly captured his quirky worldview. He didn't get the coveted couch invite that night, but something even better happened. Johnny became a fan. Over the next few appearances, Carson began calling Garry over to chat, treating him like an equal, a rare show of affection from the king of late night. That relationship changed Shandling's life. With Carson's endorsement, Garry became a sought-after comic, and in 1986 he created the groundbreaking It's Garry Shandling Show, a self-aware sitcom that gleefully broke the fourth wall. By the late 80s, he was guest hosting The Tonight Show and even rumored to be a potential successor to Johnny himself. Shandling ultimately turned that opportunity into art, parodying the entire talk show world with HBO's The Larry Sanders Show, a series that would influence a generation of comedians. Through it all, Shandling never forgot who opened the door. Carson quietly mentored him behind the scenes, advising him on timing, delivery, and how to connect with an audience. "Johnny gave me confidence," Garry once said. From a nervous writer to one of the most innovative voices in modern comedy, Garry Shandling's journey began the night Johnny Carson told America, "Here's someone you should watch." Jerry Seinfeld. In May 1981, Jerry Seinfeld was a 27-year-old comic grinding it out in New York and Los Angeles clubs. Funny, polished, but still anonymous outside the comedy circuit. He'd been honing his clean, observational style for years, turning life's smallest annoyances into punchlines. His only TV credit, a short stint on Benson, had ended abruptly when he was fired without warning. By that spring, his career was at a crossroads. As Jerry later said, "The Tonight Show was the all or nothing of being a comedian." On May 6, 1981, he finally got his shot. Seinfeld walked onto Johnny Carson's stage and launched into a perfectly crafted routine about payphones, supermarkets, and the absurd logic of everyday life. The audience warmed up immediately. By the end of Jerry's set, Carson flashed him the small, wordless OK sign with his thumb and forefinger. In Carson's world, that gesture was as good as a seat on the couch. The audience's applause and Carson's nod changed his trajectory. Seinfeld was suddenly the comic everyone wanted to book. Over the next few years, he returned to The Tonight Show again and again, refining his timing and comfort on camera. In August 1984, he finally earned the coveted invitation to join Johnny on the couch. For a kid who'd spent years dreaming of that moment, it was surreal. And we all know what happened after that. Jerry Seinfeld became arguably the most successful comedian in history. Stephen Wright. In 1982, Stephen Wright was a 26-year-old Boston comic playing coffee houses, Chinese restaurants, and half-empty clubs. His humor was strange, brilliant, and bone dry, the kind of act that left half the crowd confused and the other half in tears from laughing. Then, by pure chance, the Tonight Show talent booker caught his act after reading an LA Times mention and wandering into a club. What they saw was unlike anything on television, a mumbling, deadpan philosopher delivering surreal one-liners that bent reality itself. They took a gamble and called Stephen Wright for his first national TV appearance. On August 6, 1982, Wright shuffled onto Carson's stage, curly hair wild, voice barely above a whisper, and opened with,
"Thanks."
Within minutes, the laughter built into a wave. Johnny Carson, sitting behind his desk, was grinning ear to ear. Wright had done the impossible. He killed with silence. When Wright finished, Carson gave him a warm handshake and a rare sign of excitement. But the real shock came the next day. Wright got a call from the Tonight Show talent coordinator. "Johnny wants you back this week." It was unheard of, a back-to-back booking for a brand new comic. 6 days later, he returned with an entirely fresh 5 minutes and crushed again. In 1 week, Stephen Wright went from an anonymous Boston oddball to a national sensation. Offers poured in: Saturday Night Live, HBO specials, a Grammy-winning comedy album, and even an Academy Award for a short film he co-wrote. Each milestone traced back to Carson's stage and Johnny's instinct. Roseanne Barr. By 1985, Roseanne Barr was unlike any comedian America had seen. A 32-year-old housewife from Salt Lake City who billed herself as a domestic goddess, she built her act around the chaos of real working-class life. Lazy husbands, screaming kids, and the absurd grind of motherhood. At the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, she was already a headliner, thanks to club owner Mitzi Shore. But outside of LA, no one knew her name. Female comedians were rarely featured on The Tonight Show, making it a tough stage to crack. But when talent scout Jim McCauley saw her act, he knew she was something new, raw, authentic, and fearless. On August 23, 1985, Roseanne Barr walked onto The Tonight Show stage and opened with,
"I've been married for 13 years, and let me tell you, it's a thrill to be out of the house."
Here was a woman talking about marriage and motherhood, not with sweetness, but with bite. The voice of every overworked mom who finally said what she was thinking. And then she got what every comic dreams of, the okay of approval from Johnny. The effect was immediate. Within days, Roseanne had a new manager. She went from performing for 100 people in a club to entertaining 60,000 at the Houston Astrodome. That exposure led to an HBO special the next year, which caught the attention of producers Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner. They were developing a sitcom about a realistic working mother, and after watching Roseanne's Carson debut, they knew they'd found their star. 3 years later, Roseanne premiered on ABC and became one of the biggest sitcoms of the era. Barr won an Emmy and a Golden Globe, and she never forgot who gave her that first shot. "It was the beginning of my life," she said years later. Ellen DeGeneres. By 1986, Ellen DeGeneres was a rising comic working small clubs in New Orleans and Los Angeles, charming audiences with her mix of warmth, wit, and an offbeat routine where she imagined calling God on the phone. She was talented but still an unknown. Then fate stepped in. Jay Leno saw Ellen crush at the Improv and put in a word with Carson's team. They came to see her perform, and soon the 28-year-old was booked for her debut.
Thank you. Hi. Good. You feeling good?
She was quick, funny, and unshakably kind, the kind of humor that made audiences laugh with her, not at her. Then came the moment every comedian dreamed of. Johnny Carson pointed at her and waved her over. She crossed the stage stunned and sat beside her hero as Carson told her, "You're terrific." From that night forward, Ellen's career exploded. She became a regular on the late-night circuit, earned her own sitcom, one of the few women in history to headline a network comedy, and later a wildly successful daytime show that would run for 19 years. She always pointed back to that 1986 night as the moment that changed her life. "I always knew he was going to call me over," she said years later. "I could feel it." Carson's wave not only launched Ellen DeGeneres, it cracked open the door for a new generation of women in comedy. Drew Carey. In November 1991, that same door opened for a 33-year-old ex-Marine from Cleveland named Drew Carey. At one point, Drew had just $7 in his bank account, waiting tables at Denny's while chasing the dream. The Tonight Show was his white whale, his shot at redemption. On November 8, 1991, he finally got it. Wearing his thick glasses and Midwestern grin, Drew walked onto Carson's stage and delivered a set about military rules, Midwest living, and the absurdities of everyday life. He killed. Carson and Ed McMahon were in stitches. And then, unbelievably, Johnny waved him over. Carson praised his set, chatted with him warmly, and in that moment, an unknown from Ohio became the newest name in American comedy. The transformation was immediate. Within weeks, Drew landed an HBO special, a Letterman booking, and by 1995, his own sitcom, The Drew Carey Show, which ran 9 seasons and made him a household name. Drew later called that moment the greatest of my life, saying, "Johnny didn't just give me a thumbs up, he gave me a career." Johnny Carson's Tonight Show was more than a talk show. It was a launching pad for dreams. These stories all share one constant: Johnny Carson's instinct for greatness. He didn't hand out approval lightly. Performers had to earn that grin, that nod, that rare wave to the couch. But when they did, it changed everything. For 3 decades, Carson was America's cultural gatekeeper, the bridge between obscurity and stardom. He wasn't just introducing comedians, he was introducing careers. As one writer put it, Carson didn't make you famous, he made you matter.